Hello and welcome to Reality Check. I'm Ross Coulthart, and what a week it's been. Very, very busy indeed. Of course, this show, we're going to focus very strongly on the interview I did with Lue Elizondo, the former Pentagon UFO investigator, and his book Imminent. And we're bringing my good friend and colleague Marek von Rennenkamp in to help me do the analysis. But before we roll Marek in, I do want to talk about the breaking news of the appointment of a new AARO director. This is the Pentagon's UFO UAP Investigation Office, AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and the interim director since October 2023, since Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick departed, has been Tim Phillips. And he's now been announced by the Defense Department to be being replaced by a Dr. John T. Kozlowski, who's come to us from the National Security Agency. And I have to say, Dr. John Kozlowski is extremely well spoken of by people I respect and admire in the UAP field. People say he's very, very genuine about bringing a new approach to AARO. Not that he's hypercritical of his predecessors, but that he does want to try and restore public confidence in AARO after, frankly, what has been months of turmoil. One of the first tests of Dr. John T. Kozlowski, of course, is going to be whether he retains Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick in the rather unusual role he's had as a kind of semi-consultant to AARO, where he's been commenting in his role as a former director of AARO and being given, I think, undue emphasis, because of his past role as a director of AARO. So it'll be very, very interesting to see whether Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is kept on in that role by Kozlowski. But what I can tell you about Kozlowski is he's pretty impressive. He comes from the NSA, which is, of course, one of America's premier spy agencies. He's been involved in what sounds like incomprehensibly complicated research, leading mission-oriented research in the fields of networking and computing. He's a subject matter expert in the area of free space optics, whatever that is, advising various DoD agencies. In addition to his optics research and crypto mathematics, Dr. Kozlowski invented an advanced language-agnostic search engine and served at the DoD Special Communications Enterprise Office. I have no idea what that means. I took a peek earlier at 2 patents that Dr. Kozlowski has patented and found them so incomprehensible I'm not even going to try and tell you what they are. He's got a bachelor's degree in mathematics and physics from California State University, San Bernardino, and a PhD in electrical engineering from Johns Hopkins University. And just to give you a summary of his work, the focus of his doctoral research was the invention of novel devices that leverage principles from quantum optics to receive very weak phase-encoded signals. Clear as mud. Well, what I can tell you that does make sense is Kozlowski is very well spoken of by people who want change and want a greater degree of transparency and openness by the Pentagon. And frankly, whilst I'm not a huge fan of AARO and I've been very critical of AARO, I think this is potentially a very positive move. And it's going to, I think, be incumbent on all of us to give Dr. Kozlowski a chance. Let's show him good faith and let's see how he moves. By the way, if anybody wants a job, I noticed that there's also a AARO Deputy Chief of Staff going. You can be based in Virginia or Alexandria, and you would be the Chief of Staff for AARO. And you'd have a top secret SCI clearance. So if anybody wants the job, it's up on the odni.gov website, AARO Chief of Staff. Start date 20th of October. So it looks like they're hiring, which is good news. Now, before we get into this week's show, I want to also show you an interview section that we didn't run in the Lue Elizondo interview, purely and simply because of time. A lot of folk have been asking me why Lue Elizondo made no comment about David Grusch. And before the rumour mill starts, can I say Lue spoke extremely highly of David Grusch, and the decision not to include the particular comment that I'm about to show you in the program was purely and simply made because of time. But a lot of folk, I think, have attached a lot of importance to the fact that there was no mention of David Grusch in the Lue Elizondo interview, so I thought it would be important for people to see just how highly Lue Elizondo regards David Grusch and how he shares the travails and the pain that David Grusch has been through for being a whistleblower. David, of course, is the guy that I interviewed in June last year for NewsNation when he went public as a former very senior intelligence officer, formerly with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, speaking about his knowledge of a retrieval and reverse engineering program involving UAPs. Here's what Lue Elizondo said. This is a dangerous battle you're fighting, Lue. There are forces, powerful forces, that don't want this story told.
Oh, yeah. And they'll go to great lengths to keep it a secret. Look what happened to poor Dave. You know, I worked with Dave at Space Force. I don't know if that's public knowledge, but I'll say it. What the hell? He and I were working the UAP topic for Space Force for a very good man, a senior guy, very senior guy, by the way. And this was all in the open. So, I mean, this was acknowledged at the time. And he did the right thing. You know, a lot of our servicemen and women suffer deeply from PTSD. And until recently, we were always told, you know, it can affect your security clearance, don't seek psychological help. And then something happened. Somebody who I respected quite a bit, and thankfully it was General Clapper, when he became the DNI, he said, we're not going to hold our men and women anymore responsible. If they go and seek mental counseling and they self-referral because of PTSD, the horrible things that they have to endure in combat, they should not be penalized from their security clearance, right? So what happened with Dave Grusch when he did the right thing? He did exactly what he was supposed to do. Some nitnoid reporter gets information from none other than who? Two people from inside the government to say, Dave had counseling. Well, wait a minute. That's exactly what you want someone to do if they need it. Because the suicide rate for our men and women in uniform is through the roof. And you know what? No one seems to really give a shit. So this is why we had to change the policy. So for David doing the right thing, the very first thing he does within 24 hours, they start seeding dissension and they start misinformation and trying to question his loyalty and his credibility. David Grusch is a patriot. And in my book, he's a damn fine human being and a hero for what he did. And what was his reward from that? What was his reward for that? Immediately, the antibodies came out and they tried to discredit him, just like they tried to do me, just like they try to do anybody else who comes out and steps out of rank.
So as you can see, a glowing endorsement from Lue Elizondo for David Grusch. Now, let's move on to today's show, and boy, we've got a lot ahead of us. Here we go. Lue sat down with me last Friday and gave a very detailed one-on-one interview which ran in prime time on NewsNation, and we've had an overwhelming response. And in order to do the analysis of that show and follow up on some of the issues that Lue raised, I'm bringing in Marek von Rennenkamp, who's a former national security advisor to the State Department and a Obama administration appointee to the Pentagon, the Department of Defense. But before I bring Marek in, I want to tell you about a product that happily is sponsoring Reality Check and which also addresses some of the egregious food that you Americans happen to eat. And it's all about the Gut Cleanse BioComplete 3. The theory that is pushed by the Gut Cleanse BioComplete 3 product is that there is a potential toxin in all of the, quote, healthy foods that scientists have been telling us to eat with a fraudulent food pyramid for some considerable time. One day I will do a story on Reality Check about the American ultra-processed food diet and why I fear for this beautiful country that it seems to be suffering from the appalling food that it eats, and it needs a fix. Well, maybe that fix is the Gut Cleanse BioComplete 3. There's a Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist, who is saying that there's a potential toxin in our food that's causing huge digestive issues, and it's affecting millions of people worldwide. The warning signs include weight gain, fatigue, digestive disorders, stiff joints, even skin problems. And Dr. Gundry explains that these side effects are often mistaken for normal signs of aging because digestive issues develop usually over a matter of years and sometimes even decades. And I can assure you that the damage that we're talking about is probably caused by these supposed health foods, and it's far from normal. The good news is you can fix this problem from your own home. It's very simple. You just have to know which foods are actually healthy and which contain this hidden potential toxin. So you can find this yourself at the gutcleanseprotocol.com/Ross. That's gutcleanseprotocol.com/Ross. And if you go there, you'll find that after years of research, Dr. Gundry has decided to release an informative video to the public for free, and it's uninterrupted, showcasing exactly which foods you need to avoid. Go find that video at gutcleanseprotocol.com/Ross and click on the link in the description below. Okay, let's get into the show. Marek von Rennenkamp, welcome to Reality Check, sir. How are you today? What did you think of the Lue Elizondo special we put to air last week?
Well, Ross, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. And congratulations on another extraordinary interview that, in my mind, really pushes this conversation forward. And I'll just quickly kind of at the outset state that your interview, Lue's book, really makes the case for why we need Congress to pass the legislation that is before it that would get to the bottom of these explosive allegations that we're hearing from multiple individuals. So, Ross, congratulations. You did a superb job, and love to dive into the details with you.
So I should explain that Marek is very much a journalist in his own right. He's a contributing commentator for The Hill, which is a sister publication with the network that we all belong to, the Next Star Network. And Marek, I love your pieces. If we're going to give each other a mutual admiration society, I think everybody should read the Hill contributions made by Marek because he adds a depth and a contribution to the issue that, frankly, in television, we're not able to do quite often. I do agree with you that Lue's contribution was significant, and I think the passing of the legislation that's coming up in the National Defence Authorization Act at the end of this year is going to be absolutely crucial. I have to admit, I'm not optimistic. I'm a bit grim, having been in Washington to shoot the Lue interview and seen what Lue's up against. The very few people like Lue Elizondo are up against on the Hill is a very determined cadre of gatekeepers in the defence aerospace industry, frankly, Marek, who just do not want this story told. And I just want you to have a look at this clip. This was an exchange that I had with Lue, basically with the Congress as a backdrop, and intriguingly with the Smithsonian Science Museum, which I thought was quite apt as a background as well. And we were talking about how reluctantly he's become very much the face of the UAP issue. So Lue, when you first started out in this campaign, I mean, it was back in 2008, you first heard of UFOs. You had no idea about the phenomenon, did you?
No clue, not at all. Never even thought about it.
And yet, what was it, 9 years later, 2017, you were the public face of a New York Times story that rocked the world.
One of the public faces, not the public face. Look, this has always been a team effort.
It strikes me, Lue, you're a very humble person. You are very much the reluctant hero in this campaign, aren't you?
Look, it can't be about me, right? I'm doing this so you can think on your own. Don't rely on me, on Lue Elizondo, to tell you what to think. That's the exact opposite of what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to enable everyone, the American people, these folks up here. That's what my goal is.
So you want people to get up there and start asking questions of their Congress people?
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, there's people right now in that building that are very keen to get to the bottom of this, and they're committed. I mean, these are on both sides, both Republican and Democrat, and even independents. This is truly a bipartisan issue.
Any thoughts on what Lou's just said to us there, Marek?
Well, Ross, first of all, I want to highlight that this is, and as Lou made very clear, this is one of perhaps the only issues, or one of very few issues, that is truly bipartisan in a deeply divided country and in a politically fractured nation. So I do want to highlight. I know there is some pessimism about the legislation that is in front of Congress, but I do want to highlight that perhaps maybe highlight the positive and the more optimistic side of this, and that is that this has united the all of the kind of different factions in American politics, whether it is Democrats, the more MAGA Trump Republicans, and more moderate Republicans. We've seen a remarkable kind of coalescing around the members of Congress who are interested in this. And we really need to see more step up and become more vocal. But Lou's right. There is certainly a lot of work ahead, but it is a bipartisan issue, and that deserves a closer look and certainly some analysis and examination.
I think the thing that sticks out for me is Lue is, as he acknowledges, he's quite a humble guy. He doesn't like being the focus of attention. But the reality is, what really struck me when I was filming with him over several days in DC, he's under incredible pressure. And the decision that he made as, a very senior serving employee of the Defense Department to step away from that world that he'd been part of for decades and to make this decision to speak out publicly and take a stand on the UAP issue, it's probably the bravest thing that he, as a warrior, as a combat soldier, has ever done. And I was really shocked today, Marek. I'm going to take a swipe at the stupid sod who basically made this insinuation against Lue. I won't say who it was, but this idiot commented online basically saying, in the wake of his CBS Mornings interview, this is just a cash cow for Lue Elizondo, and that essentially all this is about is insinuating that he and we are all about making money. I can tell you, for Lue, the costs have been intense. And that's the thing that really struck me when I was filming with him, is the damage that this has caused to his career, the stress on his family life. It's intense. And I don't think the public understand the degree of sacrifice that he's making in order to bring this issue into the public domain.
I couldn't agree more, Ross, and it really speaks to motivations. To your point, I think actually physically showing a photo of the RV, the trailer that he lived in your special, it drives home that this was not easy for Lue, his family, and it certainly was an enormous stressor on his life. There's no question about that. I think he saw, as Chris Mellon has elucidated, he saw a major national security vulnerability, a gap, an extraordinary gap that nobody was paying attention to. He's been hammered. He's been attacked relentlessly online and by the Pentagon. And so you're absolutely right. He made some enormous sacrifices to come forward, and he is driving the conversation forward now, several years on from going public and from that fairly well-known resignation letter. Now he is driving the conversation, and he's truly, I think it would not be hyperbolic to say that he is one of the key catalysts behind some of the most extraordinary legislation we have seen in American history. I mean, seeing the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, put in writing, in black and white, non-human intelligence, proceed to list it 24 times, alongside legacy programs, which, as many of your viewers know, but that's the nomenclature for these alleged programs that retrieved and reverse engineered or attempted to reverse engineer non-human craft. And that's not me saying that, Ross. That's the Senate Majority Leader's black and white legislation, right? And there's been some chatter about, hey, this is just driven by staffers. Well, gosh, I'd love to show those people the clip of Chuck Schumer on the Senate floor engaging in a colloquy, a scripted exchange with Senator Mike Rounds, a Republican, going back to the bipartisan element of this, and making extraordinary statements and saying, direct quote, multiple credible sources have told Congress that information has been withheld illegally. So just to quickly come full circle, Lue has catalyzed a remarkable moment in American history. And if it's all nonsense, boy, we need to know. And that's all the more reason to get this legislation passed and for American citizens to engage their elected representatives.
Marek, I want to drill down into something that I know is in your area of expertise, which is the inevitable criticism of Lue is going to be, where's the evidence? Even in the wake of the show that went to air over the weekend, Lue's basically being criticised for making assertions that he can't back up. And even on his own admission, he can't back up because he's constrained by the DOPSA, the Defence Office Pre-Publication Security Review, which very, very heavily constrains what he's allowed to talk about. But you were talking there about Chuck Schumer, who, if I'm not mistaken, Chuck's a member of the Gang of Eight. He's a member of the group of 8 people in the Congress. And this is why it's so significant. This is why, you could drive a car at people and they still wouldn't understand the significance of this. Chuck Schumer is one of the guys in the Congress who is briefed, isn't he, into the most sensitive secrets in the United States defense and intelligence community. He's allowed to know about the waived, unacknowledged special access programs, the most dark secrets of all. And presumably, if there is a legacy UFO crash retrieval reverse engineering program, one would assume that he's at least privy to some of that. Or do you believe that the implications of what Lue is saying are that somebody like Chuck Schumer has realized, and the reason why he's so motivated about this with getting this legislation through the Congress is because he's realized there is something going on and he doesn't know about it?
So, Russ, a lot to unpack there. You started your show off, speaking about, and I'm going to go to your promotional element about the diet that Americans have and how processed foods are a major factor in Americans' health. I think another major problem in America today is that we no longer teach civics, and I think a lot of the people who comment on the Schumer legislation, for example, have no clue about how our government fundamentally works. So yes, you are correct. Chuck Schumer is a member of the Gang of Eight, a very elite group of members of Congress who are supposed to be, under our Constitution, aware of, read into our most sensitive secrets. And when somebody like Chuck Schumer, a cautious politician, comes out and authors 64 pages that, if you read it, the letter and spirit of that legislation, it says, somebody who should have knowledge of X, Y, and Z, does not have that knowledge. And we have, quote, credible evidence and testimony that indicates that information has been withheld from Congress illegally. That is it's an earth-shattering development that I must say I'm ashamed at the U.S. media and the mainstream media, the lack of the attention, the complete ignorance of the kind of the monumental allegations that are part of this legislation, as well as the caliber of the individuals who are sponsoring it. Let alone, we can take Lue out of this. You can take individuals like Carl Nell, a high-ranking former Army officer who's said the same things, David Grusch. You can take all of them out of this. If you just take the Schumer legislation just by itself, on its own, it is a remarkable piece of legislative writing that has umpteen numbers of subtext and context that need to be analyzed.
So do you think Schumer knows about the crash retrieval program, or do you suspect he's realised that he's not been read into something that properly Congress ought to have been briefed about?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Ross, I like to deal in facts. So now we're going into speculation territory. And I want to be clear that I'm speculating here. And I suspect that I don't think he's been read in if these programs are actually in existence. And correct me if I'm wrong, if you've heard anything else, but I suspect that thanks to Lue and his efforts and other efforts, Chris Mellon, Dave Grusch, you can go down the list. I suspect that enough individuals have come behind closed doors to Congress and has resulted in this legislation. A pet theory of mine, and I'm open to any and all alternative takes, is that Schumer specifically was informed of these programs because I see a schism between what Schumer and Rounds are doing on one side and what Gillibrand, Rubio, and the other senators are doing on the other side. Because you had these last year, you had two kind of competing efforts on UAP disclosure. They were both complementary. They both kind of alleged the same thing, but they seem to occur in parallel, and they seem to have been stovepiped and separated from each other. And I find that intriguing, right? For every indicator that we have is that Schumer's and Rounds have been kind of doing something in perhaps a silo, and that could be because Schumer was informed perhaps by some high-ranking officials privately that this is worth pursuing. I could very well be wrong, but that's a possibility. I'm just calling it how I see it. So that's I think a distinct possibility.
Let's get into some of the detail of what Lue revealed on the NewsNation interview. I think one of my favourite moments, if you can have a favourite moment in something like this, something as serious as this, is the quite extraordinary detail that he gives of an alleged biological implant, some kind of alien implant being removed from a US serviceman, I think at the Walter Reed Medical Hospital, the military hospital, where the surgeon who is removing the object is so freaked out because it appears to be trying to avoid being captured by the surgeon. And when it's in the Petri dish, it even moves in the Petri dish. That for me was one of the most uncanny moments. You know, you're literally describing what may be non-human technology, implants.
That's right, Ross. And look, here's where I have to be maybe a little more circumspect and maybe even skeptical. And that is a remarkable story. And if we get more corroborating information, excellent. The bottom line from my perspective, and I think I started with this, is these are very serious people that are making these statements and allegations, to your point, right? That is all the more reason why this legislation is so important. We need to get to the bottom of that, right? Lue, have nothing but utmost respect for him, but we need evidence. We need somebody to come forward, raise their hand in front of Congress and said, yes, I took that specimen out of service member X. Go in front of Congress, do it under oath. Let's move this process forward. So I think that the point is, thanks to your reporting and your interview, we now have something tangible to dig into, to sink our teeth into, and for Congress to pursue, because nobody else is going to pursue this.
I guess the question, though, in my mind, Marek, is how much really is Lue's interview going to move the needle? Because he is susceptible, let's be brutally honest about it, he is susceptible to the allegation because of the constraints imposed by his DOPSA, by that Defence Office pre-publication security review. He's susceptible to the allegation that he's just not providing any evidence to back up what he says, that we just have to take his word. You know, essentially, I was told something by people at Walter Reed Military Hospital that an implant was removed from a serviceman and that it was doing weird things which appeared to be evading detection. I mean, ultimately, you're right. the only way to substantiate that and to corroborate it is to bring those people before the Congress or to get them deposed in some way, maybe sit them in front of a TV interview. If you're out there, whoever that was, very happy to talk to you. But the thing that really does make me wonder is whether the Elizondo interview in itself is going to move the needle at all, or whether even within the UAP community, there's going to be a kind of a ho-hum. We've heard all this before. These kind of claims have been made before. Lue's talked about Roswell before. He's basically said Roswell was real. What's the evidence? What do you say to that? What do you say to that suggestion? Where's the evidence?
Ross, I agree completely. And I've been in touch with Lue and other folks, and I suspect we may be learning more if certain legal elements are addressed. We may be learning more, and I'll have more to say about that in a Hill piece coming up soon. But I want to really get back to the core of your question, Ross, and I'll take this back to the New York Times story that Lue helped break with Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. And that article was published alongside two videos, right? The Go Fast and the Gimbal video. And all along, there was an aviator by the name of Ryan Graves who was intimately familiar with that incident. He didn't say anything publicly until what? Until that video became public. So my hope is, and this is part of why I cover this story, and my hope is that when people see your special or read my piece or what have you, that it elicits some kind of interest, or it lights a fire, and an individual or multiple individuals with knowledge of that incident or allegation feel less encumbered or are free, feel more inspired to speak to Congress or whoever the case may be. If it's the media, if it's you, I hope they go to you, Ross.
Me too.
Yeah. So I think shining a light on these allegations and reducing the stigma and normalizing this conversation, hopefully will result in a critical mass that sustains itself with more individuals coming forward. I think that's the core of what we are doing here.
I think that's the key point, and that's what I was looking for to hear from you, which is that what Lue Elizondo has done is normalize this conversation. I was watching, before I came in for this interview, I was rewatching the CBS Mornings interview that he did, which was only 4 minutes, but 4 minutes on a very key primetime network television morning show. And it really struck me how receptive that group of interviewers were. I think there were 3 interviewers from CBS sitting there with him. They were very receptive to what Lue was saying. There was no attempt to giggle or stigmatize or treat with taboo a subject that probably, I reckon, 5-6 years ago, before the whole New York Times story broke, I reckon it would have been giggled at. People did. They kind of sniggered at the subject of UAPs. Now we've moved beyond that. I think the public, there's a wisdom of the crowd there. People are basically thinking, yeah, you know what? There is something to this. So I think the significance to me of the imminent book, the Lue Elizondo book, is that what it's doing is it's normalizing the public conversation. And hopefully, as you say, making it possible for people who do have that direct knowledge that at the moment Lue Elizondo can't reveal what he knows to come forward. I just also want to make the point, it's funny, it's in the course of our research when we were checking Lue's bona fides that you normally do for this kind of interview, I was doing a ring around talking to people in the Congress and talking to people who have knowledge in the Pentagon of Lue Elizondo's background. And I don't think people quite realize the job that he was doing, especially the most recent job that he was doing at USDI, the Office of the Undersecretary for Defense Intelligence. Lue was essentially a liaison with the highest level oversight bodies for special access programs inside the Defense Department. I think it's over the Senior Review Group or some such body. Basically, the body that that gets to review all of the special access programs inside the Pentagon, it was Lue who was basically at that very high level, clearly highly cleared to know an enormous amount about some of America's most sensitive secrets. That's the thing that leapt out to me in his book as well, is that I didn't know a huge amount, to be honest with you, about Lue's past work. And when I was talking to people trying to figure out who Lue Elizondo was and trying to get to the bottom of what his role really was with ATIP, the Pentagon's UFO investigation program, a lot of people sort of slyly indicated to me that one of the reasons they held such huge respect for Lue Elizondo was because he was such a highly cleared guy. He was one of the guys who really did know all the secrets in the Pentagon at a very, very high level, basically because he was working out of this office in the Undersecretary for Defense Intelligence. With your knowledge of national security, how significant is Lue's background to an understanding of why we should take seriously what he's saying?
That is a fantastic question, and I think for the folks that are not initiated into the kind of the nuances and the arcane process of the national security establishment, Lue had a lot of tickets. What are referred to? Those are the special accesses to compartmented secret programs. And so that is a huge part of this. Lue has the background. He has the position to speak from some level of authority. Of course, we need evidence. Of course, we need to verify claim X or Y. No question about that. But the point is, we need to take people like Lue, Carl Nell, Dave Grusch seriously. There's this constant refrain. Oh, we've always heard this story. It's been around for years and years and years. Well, maybe there is a reason that has been around for years. But B, we have never had multiple individuals that were so highly cleared into very sensitive programs and activities, basically in lockstep with the core allegation. And that is extraordinary. And that's all the more reason why we need to take this as seriously as you and I do. But I really, think we need to spur some more interest in the media and the broader public, because this is the characters that the key characters are truly credible on their face. Let's put it that way.
It's a huge sacrifice for Elizondo. I mean, I was really struck when I was talking to him and Jen, his wife, the financial, but also the emotional cost for him and his family, just dealing with moving away from a very secure job as a fairly senior official in the Department of Defense, coming out of the shadows, basically losing everything, going and working for Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, getting his salary cut in half, living in a motorhome, digging his own pit toilet. I mean, my God, it was a wretched time for the poor bloke. I have to admit, seeing the pressure that he's under and how vilified he is often by people who are completely ignorant of the sacrifices that he's making, I do wonder sometimes whether he might regret privately making the decision that he made, because the public, to a large degree, is unappreciative of the sacrifice that he's making. And I think one of the things that we should acknowledge, Merrick, as part of our job as journalists is these people, whistleblowers like Lue, they make enormous sacrifices. Dave Grusch, Lue, even Carl Nell, Chris Mellon, all of these people sticking their heads up. There's a tendency for these people to get shot at purely and simply because they're taking the risk of actually sticking their head up above the parapet and talking about things that are very, very unpopular from within the Defense Department that, frankly, let's be honest about it, a group of gatekeepers don't want known.
Absolutely right, Ross. And that's so I try not to consider myself a journalist. I don't have any formal journalistic training. I do have a little bit of analytic training, right? I worked in the government, graduate school degree, really focused on analysis, national security analysis. And when I look at the various players, Lue, particularly Lue in this case, Grusch, Nell, to your point, that does fit into my analytic judgment. What are these individuals' personal circumstances. Are they enriching themselves? I don't see. Obviously, Lou's living in an RV and digging his own toilet. He's not enriching himself on this topic, right? So that is certainly something to consider in our analytic kind of process and judgment as we vet different claims, as we look at motivations. Very important, right? So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's very, very important to keep these personal circumstances in mind, and I think it's absurd to call these individuals grifters. Just absurd on their face. They gave up very well paying jobs to speak what they believe is the truth, and there certainly is a lot of circumstantial evidence, whether it's the legislation alone, right? There's an enormous amount of circumstantial evidence that they're on to something significant.
I think one of the things that leapt out at me in the interview that I did with Lue, and he's also expanded on this in detail in the book, is his account of the Collins elite, that there is in the Pentagon and in the intelligence community a group of people who are deeply, and no criticism of them for this, by the way, they're entitled to be religious. They're deeply evangelical Christian, deeply, deeply religious. And they perceive the phenomenon, whatever it is, as demonic. And Lue tells me in the interview, and he does a little bit of this in the book as well, about a meeting or a sort of a confrontation in a hallway that he had with a very senior member of the Collins elite, somebody who was very, very senior in DIA. I think you and I both know who he's talking about. And I've looked online, and this person he's a very deep evangelical Christian, somebody of avowed Christian faith. What do you think about the propriety of somebody in the Defense Department, though, letting their religious faith intrude on, one, the public's right to know about something that is, according to Lue Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Dave Grusch, Colonel Nell, a national security, public safety threat? And what do you think about the idea that, religious beliefs are allowed to intrude into the day-to-day workings of a government agency, especially one as crucial as the Pentagon?
I think it's outrageous, Ross. Pure and simple, it's outrageous. I think it's unconscionable to have any kind of bias, right? That's the worst thing from an national security perspective. Any kind of bias that clouds objective thinking, objective analysis is a major, major source of concern. And if what Lue is saying is accurate, this is pretty extraordinary. And I do want to, on the topic of religion and theology and UAP, I want to quickly just plug, and I'm not an expert, and I'm the first person to admit when I'm not an expert on something. I want to quickly plug a book by Paul Thigpen, a Catholic theologian, on extraterrestrial intelligence in the Catholic Church, I believe is the title. And then Matt Halstead is another individual who's an academic, a faith-based academic who's done some. Both of them have done some pretty remarkable, very deep kind of academic work on this topic. And I think I hope it's fair for me to summarize their conclusions. Their findings are that there really is there from their perspective, and it's logical to me. That there is no inherent conflict between what Lue is alleging or the possibility of non-human intelligence and these religions, these religious traditions that we have. That may seem counterintuitive on its face, but I think they've done a remarkable job of addressing that. So I want to quickly, I'll just summarize. I think it's outrageous. It's unacceptable. It's unconscionable for any kind of religious belief. I don't care what religion it is or any belief. It doesn't even have to be theological, to interfere and be an analytic bias. But also there is some pretty robust academic literature and work by these theologians that says otherwise. That is very clear. So I hope anybody that has that perception of this inherent bias or this inherent clash, take some time to actually look at what these gentlemen have written and put out.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, Marek, was there were people online I noticed who were questioning whether Lue's really taking that much of a risk. And they're running this line that because he's gone through the DOPSA process, because he's sought approval from the Defence Office Pre-Publication Security Review Office, he's not really taking a risk at all. And frankly, for him, this is pretty lame, that essentially all he's doing is parroting what he's being told by the Pentagon. And there's a lot of people, and oh God, I think the UFO community are their own worst enemies on this issue, frankly, where they basically shaft somebody like Lue coming forward and insinuate that he's essentially operating with some kind of agenda. Let's deal with that. Let's go to the issue. Do you think Lue's some kind of plant, that he's some kind of mole who's pushing some kind of dark double agenda, that's pushing some dark nefarious agenda inside the Defense Department that we're not allowed to know about? Or do you think he's just genuinely the whistleblower that certainly I believe he is?
Unless you and I are absurd judges of character, and that's possible, Ross. No, I do not think. I do not think that is the case. I think he is coming forward and making sacrifices because he truly, profoundly believes in what he is putting out in the public record. And again, I'm just going to go back to this is all the more reason for this legislation to pass, to get to the bottom of this. If there's nothing to see here and Lue's wrong, okay, fine. But we absolutely must look, because as we've said, Lue has put his reputation, his livelihood, his retirement on the line to speak out publicly on a very, very stigmatized topic.
One of the things that I found especially intriguing, and I know from talking to other people who've been involved in close-up contact with the phenomenon, is the way Lue admits that the phenomenon's followed him home, the hitchhiker effect. And it was fascinating talking to him and Jen. There's a lot of other stuff that we didn't include in the program that they've described that I won't go into here. But at the very least, what they describe in the book is these orbs, these balls of light that appear to be manifesting themselves in the family home in front of Lue, his wife, their two beautiful daughters. I mean, if I was a Pentagon employee and I knew that whatever it is that I'm investigating was following me home, literally, something anomalous is actually manifesting itself in my home. That's, I think, one of the most extraordinary things that underlines to me the degree of sacrifice that somebody like him is making. What's your take on the whole hitchhiker effect? Do you find it plausible?
Yeah, that is a great question, Ross. And again, I'm going to have to, I think I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but I think these are extraordinary statements coming from very credible people. I can't trust them on their face because I've seen no evidence of that, right? But when you have multiple individuals largely saying the same thing, right, that there is something that is following them home, hitchhiking home with them, that begs for more investigation. I'm not going to take it at face value, but I'm certainly not going to discard it at the on the other end of the spectrum, right? So this is absolutely, it's vital that we get to the bottom of it. I think I want to just from an analytic perspective, and Ross, I'll maybe get into a little bit of why I am so fascinated by this topic and the analytic basis for why I'm even having this conversation with you. And that is because I've actually taken the time to read well over 150 raw case files from Project Sign, Project Blue Book, and Project Grudge. The 1940s and the 1950s, those are the programs that the government had to investigate UAP. And for any objective analyst to read through those reports and see the remarkable similarities from individuals hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart, who had no possible way of knowing each other's reports and seeing the consistency in those reports is remarkable. And I will add that one of the most common phenomena that was reported in I assume still is, and if we read between the lines of a lot of what the Pentagon is released in terms of pilot reports, that round spherical objects, sometimes multicolored, usually red at night or metallic during the day. And you know this, Ross, right? We've covered this. That is one of the most commonly reported phenomena. So that aligns with the historical record. Let me just back up. What Lue is reporting aligns with the historical record. It aligns with what we've heard from James Lukatsky, who wrote a book about this. I think it was Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. So from an analytic perspective, it's fascinating, but I need more evidence. And this is just crying out. It's begging for more investigation.
Absolutely. Can you explain to our audience, why would the Defense Department allow Lue to do any interview? I mean, essentially, if it's true that there is this legacy retrieval program, crash reverse engineering program, why allow him to do any kind of interview at all? Why not just say, look, you're a Defense Department employee, we're going to shut you up? I mean, in my jurisdiction in Australia, the Defense Department hates the media. They loathe talking to the media.
Right.
And, I'm always amazed that the Pentagon actually has a publication security review office that actually allows its employees to get their potential media commentary or published commentary published. In Australia, I think they'd rather put you up against a wall and shoot you. So why is there a DOPSA process? Why is there even a process like this at all? And should we make a conclusion from the DOPSA process that there is a willingness inside the Pentagon, or at least some part of the Pentagon, to be open and candid about this issue? Why give Lue the opportunity to speak at all?
Yeah, and this is an area where I'm not an expert in, but I suspect it is a constitutionally protected First Amendment right for a former employee to speak about X. However, if Y is classified, they can only restrain or constrain an ability, the former employee's ability to speak about the classified portion, the portion that was covered by an NDA, for example. So there's that inherent free speech right to write a book, to go make a movie script, up to a point, and that line is classified information. I suspect, I'm sure somebody on the internet will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is at core what the dynamic that is at play here.
So really, I want to get your final sort of encapsulation of where the Elizondo book and interview takes us, Marek. I mean, has it pushed the needle at all? Is it really advancing public awareness or public initiative at all? And more importantly, is it going to make a jot of difference in the Pentagon or in the Congress?
Ross, I am optimistic that Lue's book will, in fact, move the needle. That being said, that is a testable hypothesis, right? We can have this conversation in a year, in 2 years, and we can check to see how much, if at all, Lue's book and your interview moved the needle. That being said, I am, from my perspective, I am only seeing more individuals, more credible people coming forward and seeing a slow, let's call it an increase. It's a chain reaction, right? Of individuals. At one point, it was just Chris, Mellon, and Lue. Then Dave Grusch came out. Then Carl Nell came out. Then James Lukatsky came out, right? So you see this ever expanding, and this is the word that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer used in his press release, a vast web of individuals. That's the direct quote. Congress uncovered a, quote, vast web of individuals, and that formed the basis for this remarkable legislation. So I'm optimistic that the book, your interview, our coverage, our combined coverage will get the right people who are interested in this to come forward and hopefully catalyze some more transparency, some more openness, or more action, more congressional action with teeth in the coming months and years.
If the legislation doesn't pass at the end of this year, if the gatekeepers, if the sycophants to the defence aerospace industry are allowed to get their way on the Hill towards the end of this year as the Defence Authorisation Act comes through the House, If it doesn't pass, isn't there a risk that we could go back to another 30 or 40 years of continued embargo on truth about the UAP issue? I mean, this could all go back into a box so very easily, couldn't it?
Ross, it's something I've thought about it, and it's me physically seeing history repeat itself. I am seeing echoes of the post Robertson panel Defense Department in the current UFO analysis office. Right? There's nothing to see here. It's all nonsense. So yes, could we go back to that dynamic? Absolutely, we could. However, and maybe I'm just being optimistic, but just seeing more and more credible individuals coming forward publicly, despite the stigma, despite the risk to their reputation and their livelihoods, I am cautiously optimistic that the genie is out of the bottle. But Ross, maybe we can make a deal right here, right now, that we have this conversation in a year or two and see if I was right or if I was wrong.
Now, Marek, I want to pay credit to the work that you did in picking Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick up on some of the things that he said in some of his public commentary. He gave us a very late response to our story, and he told NewsNation, quote, "At no time did I provide false information to Congress. In fact, my team provided actual evidence, something that all of the other claimants have failed to do." What's your response to that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick comment?
I am not privy to exactly what he and AARO provided to Congress. However, I have heard from sources on the Senate side that is inaccurate and that he did not share what was presented to him by whistleblowers with Congress. So there is a major disconnect there. Frankly, I don't trust Kirkpatrick. I'll be very honest with you. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I spoke to him in person in November of 2023. I spoke to him in a lengthy interview. I want to be very clear. I'm very grateful for his time, but based on what he told me about the most recognizable UFO UAP footage of all time, you'd think that the guy whose job was UFO analysis could maybe know some basic facts about the most extraordinary UFO or most recognizable UFO footage of all time. And he either lied to me to my face twice, or he's astoundingly misinformed and ill-informed about the key UFO incidents that we all know about, the Nimitz incident and the 2015, the gimbal incident and the Go Fast videos and all that. So I have very little faith.
Can I just stop you there for a moment? Because I'm really interested in getting you the detail on this. What were the possible untruths or inaccuracies in what he told you?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty astounding. So the gimbal video, I think most Americans have seen it. They might not know it, but they've seen it. And he told me that was likely a balloon with that bizarre infrared reflection or infrared signatures. He told me is a reflection from the sun. Okay, Dr. Kirkpatrick, that incident occurred at night, so we can rule out the sun. Right? You can hear the aviators on the cockpit audio say that the object and the video and the other objects that are accompanying it are going against 120 knot winds. That's category 4 hurricane force winds. I don't know, Ross, I don't know any balloons that go against category 4 hurricane force winds. And if you do, boy, that's a heck of a child's birthday balloon or toy. So that's one. Pretty astounding. If you don't know the basic facts about the most recognizable UFO video of all time, I don't know what to tell you. Where did our taxpayer dollars go? That's astounding.
So that's the issue. The issue is that we don't appear to be getting from the Pentagon's UFO investigation office, the all-domain anomaly resolution office, we don't appear to be getting a scrupulously objective reasoned, well-argued explication for why we shouldn't be taking these seriously as anomalous objects.
And I'll quickly, the Go Fast video, he endorsed NASA's analysis after NASA made just an astounding catastrophic mathematical error in its analysis. I have some help. I've got an actual scientist helping me on we're working through this stuff. And then after I pointed out NASA's error on that particular video, Kirkpatrick said, "Oh, I haven't looked at NASA's analysis. Are you joking me? I mean, you literally just endorsed it, gave it a ringing endorsement a few months ago, and then you said you haven't looked at it. I mean, this is just astounding incompetence, or it's a disinformation operation. It's one or the other. There's no gray area here. This is binary. It's 0 or 1. And look, he could have misspoken. Fine, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The first time he did it twice, and now let's be analytic about this. AARO's historical report was, from an analytic perspective, atrocious. It was astoundingly, it was awful. It was one of the worst pieces of. It
was a dog's breakfast. Call it what it is. A dog ate my homework.
I wouldn't even call it a report. And then you had this absurd explanation for, some of your viewers might remember, during the big UFO hearing, Matt Gaetz, congressman from Florida, described a UAP incident that occurred that Air Force personnel felt obligated to report to his office. There's a reason they went to his office and not up the chain of command, I suspect. A pretty remarkable incident. And AARO put out this, they called it a case resolution report, that said it was some kind of high-end lighting balloon that even Mick West didn't buy. Mick West, as some of your viewers know, is perhaps the most notable UAP skeptic in the world. He didn't buy this explanation of their first, their primary culprit for this incident. And any number of, you get into the radar issues. We don't need to belabor or get into the nuances, but the point is, Kirkpatrick's comments to me come in a much broader quilt work of nonsense and absurdity that is coming out of AARO, which looks exactly like what we saw with Blue Book following the Robertson panel in 1953.
Well, Marek von Rennenkamp, let's just hope that in 30 years' time, you and I aren't still tilting at windmills looking for Pentagon truth and honesty on the subject of UAPs. I sincerely hope we get an answer, any kind of answer, sometime soon. Marek von Rennenkamp, thank you so much for joining Reality Check and helping me analyse the Lue Elizondo interview and imminent book. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Ross, thanks so much for having me.
Hello and welcome to Reality Check. Before we get started this week, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our sponsor for this week's show. Imagine having the same personal trainer as the boss. Personal trainer to the star, Tony Horton, says he's found a much more effective way to help you fight age-related muscle loss and even build new muscle. He's trained celebrities like Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty and Stevie Nicks, to name just a few. And he's now using his body strengthening method to help thousands of Americans remain healthy and active as they hit middle age and beyond. He's the subject of a short new video report detailing how his method works. It's free and online right now for you to watch or share. Simply visit tonyprotein.com/Ross. We'll link to that video below this video. Again, that's tonyprotein.com/Ross. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome back to Reality Check. Well, this week we've got a very special guest. We've got Tony Harris, the host of The Proof Is Out There, a show that investigates the world's most mysterious videos, photos, and audio recordings and uses the best technology and experts to render a credible verdict. Tony is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and filmmaker, and since 2021, so that's probably coming up to 4 years, he's been the host of The Proof Is Out There, which has become a hugely popular show on the History Channel. He's previously been an anchor with CNN and Al Jazeera. He's also a podcaster. His show, Monster DC Sniper, is a true crime podcast doing very well, reaching number 3 in all of podcasting in 2020. Welcome, Tony. Good to have you here, sir.
That's a wonderful introduction. It's so great to be with you. Thank you for your patience. I know we've tried to make this happen for a bit now, and we're here, and I couldn't be happier. Thank you.
So, Tony, I wouldn't be doing my job properly unless I asked you the question that I think is the issue that is the enigma for many people with journalists. Where do you stand on the anomalous phenomena that you report about?
I have never believed we're in, this galaxy or this universe alone. And, you know better than I how many galaxies are there out there? How many universes are there out there? I've never felt we're alone. We may be the most significant of the planets in any universe. We just don't know that at this point. Imagine what math and science had to come together, what creationist vision had to come together in order for our atmosphere to have been created to support life in the way that it does on the third rock from the sun, right? That's a fascinating thing to think about. And yet I just know that there is so much more for us to understand and so much more for us to learn. So, I'm pleased to be on a vehicle to explore an avenue of journalism that this great craft has taken me into this area. I never expected to be here. I never expected to be reporting on anomalous phenomena. But here I am, and it's been a great ride. And I'm just so happy that so many people around the world now have joined us for it.
Now, Tony, you and I are hard-bitten news journalists.
Yeah.
We've been in newsrooms in major media organisations. Am I being fair when I say there is a stigma, a taboo attached to anomalous phenomena like UFOs, creepy things like the paranormal, ghosts, Bigfoot? I mean, there is a taboo, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I bought into it. I really did for a long time. And it occurs to me now, it's just because I didn't have enough understanding. I didn't have enough knowledge. There was so much more that was beyond me at the time. And I will tell you what was interesting for me, kind of this transformation. I can remember being a kid working one of my earliest jobs, and I was a busboy at a restaurant in Baltimore, Maryland, my hometown. And I can remember being pulled into the Star Trek world. I think I owe Shatner a debt, so it's kind of crazy and weird and odd, and gives me the goose flesh sometimes to think about the fact that I'm on a channel with William Shatner, and oftentimes I think even in this new season that is rolling out, his show leads into ours. So to think that years and years and years ago, I'm watching Shatner and his show, Star Trek, is what really sort of opened my eyes to this entire world. And then finding my way into journalism and hearing all of the skepticism and reading it, how pervasive it was around this idea, this notion of anomalous phenomena and UFOs, UAPs, and that's the province of weird Uncle John who's in the garage, and we slide him his meals under the door, and he's Mr. Tinfoil Hat Guy. So to find myself in a position now where I'm taking a look at this as you are, a skeptical journalist, and searching for more evidence, and evidence gets us to proof, proof gets us to truth. It's a fascinating sort of evolution in my own personal journey in this space.
You've talked about how inevitably, because of the Fermi paradox, there must be civilizations out there. There must be intelligent life out there in the universe. But the thing that strikes me about The Proof Is Out There is that it's a show that quite blatantly suggests often that there is anomalous phenomena right here on this planet, that we're being visited by some type of non-human intelligence, that there are perhaps paranormal entities like ghosts, Bigfoot. Where do you stand? Like, what's the level of proof that we look for? I mean, the thing I'm increasingly thinking as a journalist is, how you're right. I'm as guilty as you are. I was in a newsroom. I can remember coming to my editor with a photograph of a UFO that a lady had taken over her washing line. And this is a major newspaper in Australia.
Yeah.
And the editor said to me, he said, Roscoe, we don't do stories about UFOs.
Yeah.
They're BS. You don't do stories about UFOs. And I bought that. I accepted that you don't do that. And yet this woman had taken a perfectly clear photograph on a film camera, which we developed out of the camera. So there was no chance for her to have meddled with the film. Why is there that stigma? I mean, a lot of people suggest to me that we were got at, that, there's some dark men in black force that's going around shutting us down and stopping us. But I don't think that's the case.
Not either.
I think it's just a stigma, isn't it?
I don't believe that for a moment. But I think you've hit on something with that photograph from X number of years ago, right? And the reaction of the editor in the newsroom. I think you've hit on what ends up being the conceit of our show and the reason that we even exist. Look, all credit to the folks at the History Channel and them being willing to go, where other channels and other shows dared not go years ago with The Unexplained, with Ancient Aliens, and exploring what had been talked about in quiet corners, but had not been brought into the open. Okay, so those are the shows that predate what we're doing. And then the next bold step by the History Channel is, so we're going to create a show that takes a critical look at myths, legends, and things that go bump in the night. And more than that, what we know our audience likes, is interested in, wants to know more about. So is there a way for us to create a show that, in essence, super serves that audience and takes a more critical look at the myths and legends and what's true and asks those the questions and then tries to get to the bottom of that? So all credit to the History Channel for that. And you take this on, and the only way this show works is that people have been willing to, in essence, play along with us, to say to us, hey, look, I captured something. Take a look at this. I can't explain it. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something. Are you willing to take a look at that? We also know, and you know this, the staples of our show and the work of anyone in the space, you included. The staples are Bigfoot, Loch Ness, what military pilots are capturing, right? What's in our seas? What are the strange things that are in our seas that we don't yet know about because we haven't gone 5,000 leagues beneath the sea, right? So those end up being the staples of our show. They hold us up, and I am really plain about this. They provided us with a bit of a cushion. We were able to do this wonderful thing that History Channel does, is they take the historical record, they update it when they can, but they're always able to take you back and revisit that historical record. And when we get a new clip, when we get a new story, we can update that record. So yeah, those are essentially the conceits of the show. The pillars, as we mentioned, and then the willingness of the audience to say, okay, I see what you're doing. Your format is you're going to take what we send you, and if it passes a particular threshold, you'll put it on the air. But more than that, you're going to apply some rigor. You're going to bring experts to the table to take a look at this. And then you're going to do the really either crazy thing, insane thing, or the smart thing. We'll see how many seasons we're able to keep the show interesting and informative for people. But we're going to pass a verdict. We're going to tell you what we think.
There's a great line that I think describes well the way a lot of establishment science responds to anomalous phenomena. And it can't be, therefore it isn't.
Yeah.
And I suspect the mainstream media, I want you to put your pointy head hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
One of the things I worry about is, now that I've gone down the rabbit hole of UAPs in particular and anomalous phenomena,
Yep.
I'm increasingly finding scientists who acknowledge privately that there is a scientific basis, especially with quantum phenomena, to explain potentially some of what has long been described as anomalous phenomena, including perhaps spirits, ghosts, Sasquatches. You know, there's talk of interdimensional portals.
Yes.
There's talk of, even David Grusch, when I did the interview with him, the intelligence whistleblower in
Oh, how did
2023.
I miss that? Okay, I need to see that. Oh, sorry.
Sure. David basically acknowledged that perhaps one explanation for the phenomena is that it's interdimensional, that it's not extraterrestrial at all.
Yeah.
I just want to ask you, do you think there's a risk for mainstream media, knowing the volume of the audience that's interested in this subject, that if they don't engage with this subject, they're going to lose the faith of their audience? I mean, I'm genuinely concerned that great institutions like the New York Times, the Washington Post, a lot of mainstream television, they don't want to engage with this subject. And I think as a result, they're alienating an audience that, as a wisdom of the crowd dictates, they think there's something to it.
I think you're going to be happy with what's developing in the States. All of the mainstream media certainly covered the congressional hearings a few years ago. I think the turning point for me, because when you get approached to do a show like this, and you've kind of made your bones in mainstream journalism, one of the things that at least runs through your mind is this something is this a real subject area? Is there real journalism going on here? I'm going to look like a knucklehead for delving into this space. Just stay in true crime, stay in documentaries, and make your bones there. But the one thing that convinced me that there's something here is when more and more mainstream outlets started to cover this. I remember seeing reporting about this in this topic, right, in the New York Times, and I'm like, whoa, well, wait a minute. If it's in the New York Times, the Great Lady, then okay, maybe there's something here. And so I think that more and more mainstream outlets are devoting time to it. I'm seeing it on more and more television shows and news shows I think that I'm seeing storylines that incorporate aspects of what we do, right, of the area that we're in. More and more storylines are popping up in scripted television. So I think whatever genie had been long locked up and whatever stigma was being applied to people who were delving into the space for a long, long time, I think that's been largely removed. I think there is enough skepticism out there to keep us all honest. I think we all want the clear, definitive picture of the Yeti, right? Of the inarguable, right? The Bigfoot, the skunk ape, right? We all want that. But what I think is that the public consciousness on all of these areas has been raised to a place where I think we're going to gather more and more evidence of this. We'll get to proof, and then we'll get to knowable truths in these particular areas of concern for us.
Now, this week you've got a brand new series of The Proof is out there. What can you tell us about the new series?
I love it, and there are a couple of reasons. I know everybody comes on and they talk about their show and they say they love their show. I'm going to tell you why I love our show, and one of the reasons that I love the series that's airing now is that it is a more balanced. One of the things we hope to do when we do this kind of work is get to a place where we don't have the first season looking over our shoulders and self-consciousness about the show. We are what we are. And even in the beginning, you're not quite sure what you are. But we're into season 4, wherever we are. When you see the show this season, I think you're going to see a far more settled show, a show that really knows what it is, that has received the buy-in from the audience, so that we're, operating with an embarrassment of riches in terms of the content we get to pick and choose from. I think, for example, our premiere episode is a great example of the kind of balance that we can now achieve with the show.
Can you tell us what it's about?
Well, absolutely. We kick off this episode with, the long legend skunk ape that, legend says still to this day can be found in the southeast the south and southeast quadrants of the United States, whether it's New Orleans and Louisiana, whether it's in Florida, that the legendary skunk ape is alive and well and thriving and can be found. It's a perfect opportunity for us to do what we do best on this show. We get some recent video, in many cases, new video. Some of the new video is actually being directed to us now. And we get to take a look at it. It passes the first threshold for us, which is that it's interesting video. Not many people have seen it, or if they have seen it, the comments are rife with debate, and we get to dive into that debate. The second threshold that it has to cross for us is there a historical thread to this story? And as you know, there is always a historical thread to anything that speaks to Bigfoot and Yeti and Sasquatch and the skunk ape. So the history on that is clear, and we get to update that history. The third threshold, the bar that has to be cleared, is when we send it to the experts, are they interested? Is the video itself interesting? Does it provide them an opportunity to tell a story? And do they think they can get to the bottom of it? And them getting back to us and saying, I'm not sure we can get to the bottom of it, that works for us. That works for our show. And then the last hurdle, can we come up with what we feel and everyone agree on? What is a compelling verdict on this clip? That's our show. And the skunk ape story, the video in our first story in this premiere episode of the show gives us an opportunity to show off, and flex our muscles as a show a little bit. And that's why I love that. The other story that I'm really kind of keen on, there's been a bit of an evolution for me as I've been working on this show. I just find myself gravitating more and more to the science, right? The people that we have on the show, whether it's Michio Kaku, and all of his smarts as a physicist, and all of the experts that we have, whether it's our audio analyst, our video analyst, and our tech people, they brought me along for the ride in a way that I've just become more and more interested in the science of this. So we dive into this controversy where people seem to want to debunk the idea that there were rovers that went to Mars and sent back these amazing pictures that we were analyzing, and everyone wants to take a narrow view of this or that or the other and critique it and say, there's a femur. There's what is that? Is that a lemming right there? Is it right? Is that a rodent? What is that? So, and they want to say, aha, you know how the people that we know and comment in the space are quick to point out what they think is a failing of our show or a failing of the research or the hoax being perpetrated by the government in this case. You didn't send rovers to Mars. This is some soundstage in Hollywood, right? So I love that because it gives a moment for our experts to really flex their knowledge. And so I love that story because I find myself just getting a little nerdier as we go here in these various seasons. And I find myself being drawn to the science and wanting to know as much as I can when we get these moments about the science behind them.
You've talked about the structure of the show. It's got this format where you have experts who analyze and sometimes they disagree.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what are the shows you like the most? Every now and then you'll do a debunk show where you'll say, for example, 4 UFO hoaxes or, Bigfoot hoaxes. And what rates better? What do you think the audience wants most of all? Do you think they want to see their biases proved, that there is this anomalous phenomena? Or do you think people actually enjoy seeing rigorous investigation? Do you feel pressure, I guess, at the heart of all of this? Do you feel pressure to satisfy an audience by showing something to be anomalous? Or do you think people actually want to see this stuff rigorously investigated?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question because I think initially when we were talking about the show, I will acknowledge there was a bit of concern and I voiced it and others voiced it that we would end up being purely a debunking show, right? I don't know that that's a lot of fun, right? Particularly when you're asking for people to buy in and you're asking for people, to offer up their views and thoughts on a video that they've sent in. So I don't know if that's a lot of fun, but I'm happy to say it didn't. It wasn't very long before we realized that we were getting not only clips, but that the historical record was full of stories where there were real questions about, the Patterson Gimlin film, and there were still questions for us to explore about that film all these years later. So that concern quickly went away. But in terms of audience taste and what I think they might prefer, I've never been really concerned about that. Uh, I know that we get enough clips in the course of a year that we end up with a fair amount of clips that our folks can't explain. Now, they may not be able to explain it because the quality of the video doesn't allow us to explain it, or we may not be able to explain it because we're not sure what it is, what the light source is. We've got a light pillars story in the premiere episode. So there are times when we can't differentiate between a sky lantern and something else, right? There are moments, but we generally know the category that this thing falls in. But there are enough videos where we can't be definitive about this that we end up having a pretty good balance. I don't know what the ratio is, but I got to tell you, I think one of our real strengths and strong suits and responsibilities to this genre, to this space, to the people who take this very seriously, I see it in the comments, is if we come across a fake, a hoax, we have to call that out. And I will tell you, as we've gone from season to season, the pressure on us to get that part of the show right has increased. I don't have to tell you, the technology is getting to a place now where you can make amazing, deeper.
Tell me about it. That actually takes me to my next question, which is I was sent this week. Everybody would have seen it. It's a picture of a beautiful little child sitting in a boat in the Carolina floods. And it's such a heart-rending picture. It's a little girl cuddling a puppy. And I looked at it, and the person who sent it to me said, "Look again." And then I realized it was AI.
Yeah.
And they then sent me a picture of the same image, but it was a little boy this time holding the puppy. And it made me realize how easy it is now using AI to generate heart-rending, powerful images, emotional images that play to our prejudices.
Yeah.
And that's the next question, I guess, which is how do your experts figure out if something is an AI image? I'm constantly getting sent high-resolution images of incredibly complicated-looking spacecraft hovering over international cities. And it's clearly, I mean, I have to always default to the assumption that it's an AI-generated image these days because some of them are just absurd. They're so sharp. But isn't there the risk that we might be throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, I think I got a couple of thoughts on that. Yeah, it is absolutely. We take it as a real responsibility on this show. We have, for lack of a better expression, we've created this monster of a show where we've told people we can determine what is real and what is fake and what's a hoax. It's in our tease material, for God's sakes. So we brought the pressure upon ourselves, and I'm happy to say that I just think we have an amazing team of people. So far, we have not been fooled, tricked, or anything else. But to your point, the fakes are getting to be so good right now that we have got to be extra vigilant. I think we're up to that challenge. And the other thing I think I'm proud of with the show is if we ever get it wrong, if we ever need to take a second look and revisit it and say, we kind of muffed that kick, right? We'll go back and we'll say so, and we'll give another team or our team a second look at something. Mick West has done that on a couple of occasions, disagreed with our verdict and said, damn it, I'll show you that I'm right and you're wrong. He's done that. But that's the kind of freewheeling show that we have right now, and kind of our dedication to try to get this right. But it is a huge challenge for you. It's a huge challenge for us going forward. It's a huge challenge for the audience. I think even in this premiere episode tonight, we've got a couple of situations where we're able to call it out definitively. But I think at this point, we've gotten to a place where folks are trying to fool us. And in part, that's a bit of a compliment, right? We're a successful show. We're taking on, all comers in this space. So for folks to try to purposely, trick us or whatever else to get the aha on us, you're not as good as you think you are, it is part of kind of a pat on the back to the success of everybody who's worked on this show for so long and so hard now.
There's a know-all fringe among the sort of the community of ufologists in particular, but particularly across the whole paranormal spectrum, who confidently assert that shows like yours, including I spoke once to Brandon Fugel from the Skinwalker Ranch series, and I said to him, people say your show fakes stuff.
Yeah.
And he actually said categorically it's written into the contract that we will not fake stuff and people will be dealt with if they do. Under no circumstances are things faked. Do you have any guarantees on your show that there's nothing faked?
I have, let me think about that. I don't think that there's anything in my host contract that says that. I will tell you, I would be surprised if that was even necessary with our show. Honestly, they're a different show. I love that they believe so passionately in the work that they're doing, but for us to get it wrong and for us to fake it, I just imagine the backlash on that. I just imagine the reputational damage to all of us. So that's why I say to you, I don't know that there's language. I would be surprised if anyone felt it was necessary. I know there's no language like that in my deal with the channel.
Sure.
They asked me specifically, they said to me, I said, look, I'm going to come to this thing skeptically. And they said, that's what we want. That's why we're calling you. So no, my executive producer is one of the best. And so I would be really surprised if that language were anywhere in any of our working documents. And certainly, there's our mission statement doesn't allow for anything like that. So, but I understand, in this day and time, if we're talking about, having to vet stories and clips that might be faked, I understand the question and I'm not offended by the question at all. Not at all.
Sure. So you actually did a special edition on the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah.
And did you get to go there yourself?
I did. So we've jumped out of the studio a couple of times. Once, and both of them have been kind of in an assist to those really good shows. The fact is, Skinwalker didn't need any help from us. They were a huge hit to begin with. So it was kind that they thought there was something that we could do together and invited me out. And it was a terrific time. And I got to meet the guys and I got to see how they go about their work. And I love how passionate they are about what they do and how they believe. I think they are skeptical as well. And I don't.
Did you see anything anomalous?
I didn't. I wasn't there. I wasn't there long enough, and I wasn't there at the right moment, right, to see something. And I don't think I'm trying to think of whether or not they were even in production at the time. I think they did this as kind of a special for us, right? And it didn't fire up, all the rigs that they have and everything else. But we had really wonderful conversations with them, and they let us walk the grounds and. It was a way for, I think, the audience to see, where they operate and how they operate in a different light. And it was an opportunity for us to toss through some really good clips from our show that people have sort of said, hey, let's see that again. We kind of did the same thing with in Florida for the Bermuda Triangle show, which is another really hot show for History Channel. They're just producing hit after hit. And I think we did a week of shows there, or at least a couple of episodes there that we think really showed off the team, their work, and it gave us an opportunity to feature some of the clips from our show that are tied to the Bermuda Triangle as well. So that was a really good opportunity. I hope we get more opportunities to do that, not just for other shows, but for our show as well.
What's your take on the Bermuda Triangle? Having been there, seen it for yourself, looked at the historical evidence, what conclusion have you come to personally?
I think there are gravitational forces in our atmosphere, And I think that there are moments when perfect storms align. We have wonderful meteorologists on our show. Juan Hernandez is the name that comes to mind right away. And I think that some of this is really possible, right? I don't know to what degree this is natural forces. I don't know if these are extra forces. I don't know if we're talking about pilot error in many of these instances. But I mean, there's too much in that space that's gone on for decades not to be curious about what similarities there are in these stories. So part of the thing that I try to do with all of this is to keep an open mind but remain skeptical.
One of the things that I learned early on in my journalism career, ironically covering court cases, was how bad humans are
As
at
witnesses.
being witnesses. I was amazed in court cases, often murder cases that I was covering, and witnesses would totally contradict each other on basic issues like the colour of clothing or the location of a person when the terrible incident happened.
Yeah.
And it made me realise that we're very unreliable, that one of the problems we have, all of us humans, is we fill in gaps.
That's right.
And our brain finds solutions to discoordination by filling in the gaps and coordinating things that may not have happened. Is that a problem? Is witness evidence a big problem for you guys in trying to figure out whether something's credible or not?
Well, think about how our format essentially teases that out. So our format says, send us what you've captured. Send us what you can't explain. Don't try to fill in the gaps in your knowledge with speculation. Send the clip to us. Let us take a look at it. We'll give you a call. We'll sit you in front of a camera and we'll have you walk through your experience. One of my favorite parts of the show is when we get people who have sent in clips and then, are willing to sit down and talk about their experience, because it's that human exchange at that point. They're essentially saying, hey guys, hey Tony, hey team, I captured this. I don't know what in the world this is. Would you please take a look at it and tell me what it is? So our format sort of, teases out this idea that you don't know, you think you know, but it's probably explainable. And what I love is that when we offer up the verdict to whoever has sent us the clip, 9 times out of 10, they're willing to accept it. There are times when they've pushed back, but they're willing to accept it. I love that people come to us with genuine, curiosity about what it is they've captured, right? And you hear it sometimes in the expletives that we beep out in the clips.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at a lot of your Proof Is Out There videos, and one of them that really sticks in my mind that expresses this dilemma about the credibility of witnesses, how on earth you make that judgment. There's one, a father and son, you might remember this one, in Quincy, Florida in May 2012. They shot video of a loping primate-looking creature on a thermal imaging camera in the woods in Quincy in Florida. Mm-hmm. And the father and son had gone out on a search for the Bigfoot. So just as a sort of an evidential thing, how much, for example, in a case like that, does the fact that they went out looking for the Bigfoot and that they happened to find one, they were clearly already believers, does that colour your perception of how the video comes to be analysed?
No, not at all. Not at all. What I love is, we're both journalists. That's how we made our bones, right? And so that doesn't color we were able to sort of, it's really sort of the bedrock of the show. The show has to be viewed as being, honest in this. It has to be viewed as a show of integrity, or we're off the air. I mean, how many times do you think we can get it wrong? I mean, just flat out wrong. How many times do you think, what I'm talking about? How many times as a journalist can you just get it wrong? before.
Well, I think quite frankly, often. I mean, I think this is one of the things I think we in the mainstream media often aren't very good at, which is
Mm,
publicly correcting our mistakes. I
mm,
mean, I can remember having arguments with a boss at a major newspaper and saying we should really correct this. We're actually wrong.
yeah,
Oh, bugger
yeah,
me, and it annoyed me because I think people respect you more if you're rigorous
yeah.
and honest and
I
say,
don't.
look, I just screwed up.
Well, I will tell you, I don't give us that much rope. I mean, I don't give us, three strikes and you're out. I just don't. I think, what we're saying is uh, to trust us. That's what we're saying, and so we will take a second look at a clip. We've had instances on the show where people have said you got it wrong. They're not saying to us you were sloppy. They're not saying to us that your experts, are no experts at all. No one's saying that to Kaku, right? And so, there are times when there have been real questions, and we've taken a look at it. I mentioned a couple of times when Mick West has said, "Yeah, we've got debate on the show, and people can honestly disagree about a clip." And then, that's kind of left to me and our team to say, well, where are we coming down on this? And there are plenty of instances on the show where we've said, we're not sure about this.
Well, actually, that's one thing I was going to do with this Bigfoot one, the Quincy, Florida one I was talking to you about. It actually got me in, and I liked the way your show dealt with it.
I was going to ask you, how did we deal with it?
Well, the structure was interesting because you had Steve Cull, who's a Bigfoot investigator,
Yep.
and he gave the story credibility because, of course, there's been a history of sightings of Bigfoots in that area. And then you had a professor of anatomy who came on, who said it's very likely,
yes,
very likely not a human in a suit.
Yep.
And I hadn't thought about this. It's because they said that because it was a thermal imaging camera, the black thermal signature indicated that it was a proper object. It wasn't somebody dressed up in a suit. And then you had a wildlife biologist, I think Stephanie Manker.
Yes.
And she said it looked like a primate. And you even talked to an anthropologist who looked at the walk, that kind of classic Groucho walk. And what I liked was that at the end, you kind of threw your hands up in the air and went, insufficient evidence.
Yeah.
And you do that occasionally. Sometimes you just admit, look, we just don't know.
So there are times when people think of that as a cop-out, right? But listen to how you just described our process. I mean, listen to the people who we've brought on as experts to take a look at this, and they've disagreed. And that's what I love about the show. And if we get to a place where we just can't say with any real confidence, I love that we're not afraid to say that, right? And that ends up, I think, winning us a lot of credibility points with the audience. At least I hope so.
Well, I'll give you another one that also got me because I had been fooled by this video, and you guys showed me how it was not a real video at all of anything paranormal. And it was a show you did called 5 Freaky Paranormal Occurrences. And it was a police chase video of a car that appeared to drive through an intact fence. And, it seemed to dematerialize through the fence and drive off into the forest. And the cop car video appeared to show this car had gone through a solid fence. And I can remember seeing this a few years ago, sitting in bed with my wife and going, wow, get a look at this. This is incredible. And what you showed was the local sheriff had gone back and done an analysis. And it turned out that on that particular part of the fence, the wire was on the opposite side. So the car had actually gone through the fence. The wire had lifted up, probably scraped over the top of the car, come down again. So that by the time the cop car got there, it looked like the fence was intact. I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great.
Well, I love that story. And, forgive me for not remembering, how we dealt with it. But I love that we dealt with it in a very smart way. One of the things that we're thrilled about is that we're up over 100 episodes now. Right? I mean, it's a wonderful thing. But I love that you're describing our process and that you've watched the show and you know how we approach it. We get videos like that a lot. The other thing that we see a lot is people thinking they're seeing, I think there's an example of it in the premiere episode where this phenomenon called pareidolia, where people see kind of what they want to see in an image, in a cloud, this, that, and the other. It's one of our most occurring videos, and it also shows you how our minds work, right? And in many of the videos where pareidolia is at work, people are seeing images of spirits and Jesus and this sort of thing. And one of the things I love in the show is when people's spirituality and their sense of faith attaches itself to the videos that they're sending to us. And and then that becomes a little sensitive when we take it apart in the way that we took apart that video of the car and the fence and everything else. And then, it's left to me to say, I know what you thought you saw, but it's not. And I'm not questioning your faith or your belief structure or anything like that. But it's one of those moments that I really love about the show, and that intersection between what people really firmly believe in their hearts and how it attaches to what they believe spiritually is one of the things I love most about the show, and one of the reasons why when we can, and the video is really good. The stigmata videos are I know something that really resonates with the audience.
It's funny. I did a story many years ago about Mother Mary MacKillop, who was given a sainthood here in Australia by the Vatican, and I was very, very skeptical about claims of paranormal phenomena. But what struck me was seeing the process of how the Vatican investigates alleged paranormal phenomena. And I was blown away, basically, by how rigorous the science was and how determined they were to find hoaxes and to rule out the possibility that this was somehow faked. And I have to admit, at the end of it, I sat down with my crew, and as you would know, Tony, the most skeptical people on the planet are film crews.
Yes.
And the cameraman is always telling me, you can't believe that person, Ross. But in this case, they were completely of the belief that this was a genuine miracle. And we'd all basically had our beliefs and our biases jolted. Have you had that experience yourself with particularly things like stigmata and Vatican?
I love that story because that's something I have not had that opportunity to actually hear or watch the Vatican work through that process. I would love to do that at some point. That sounds really, really fascinating. I have not had that experience. I have not. I can't say that I have, but I'm also
Is there
fascinated by it.
is there some area of the paranormal, of the mysterious, that you've not yet investigated that you'd like to delve into? What's the area that intrigues you the most?
I will tell you the area of research that I really love. And, you've heard me talk about this one area where, people's faith and what they see and what they believe, kind of collides with the physical world. I love that. Love that stuff to pieces. The other area of exploration that I am really intrigued by is what's really beneath our oceans and how far can we ultimately go and what's down there. I mean, what ecosystems are down there? It'll feel alien to us. It may not be extraterrestrial, but it'll feel alien to us. And so I think I would love more exploration of the depths of the sea. Someone asked me the other day if you could skip dimensions, if there was such a vessel that was created and you could skip dimensions, would you be willing to do it? Would you be willing to sort of leap into another galaxy? And would you be willing to go through a black hole and this, that, and the other? And that took me right back to my Star Trek days, right, as a kid. And I said, yeah, I think I would. I'm a man of some age now, and I've lived a really good life and had a world of experiences. And, I think I'd like to do that. I'd like to explore, strange new worlds. I would love to do that and hopefully be able to report back on it. But if not, if that's where the journey ended, I'd be really happy with that. I mean, and that I would not have said that before working on the show. Not in a million years.
One One of the things I respect your show for is the fact that you do change your mind. I mean, you do invite the audience to come back to you and challenge. And I think, to confess an interest here, I think you may be aware that Reality Check has a particular interest in the subject of UFOs, UAPs.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, for me, a turning point journalistically where I thought, crikey, there really is something to this. There was a whole series of roadblocks for me, moments or road signs where I realised this is real. But for me, it was the ODNI report, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And I noticed you acknowledged this in one of your shows, that to have the US government, after years of denial and dismissiveness towards the UFO phenomenon, all of a sudden they're coming out and they're saying, yep, turns out UFOs are real. Yes, they are a flight safety risk, and yes, they are a potential national security threat. How important has that been for you and your show in terms of making your focus, if you like, on doing more UFO-focused stories?
Well, it is one of the staples of the show from day one. I don't know when we started this and started talking about the show in 2020 that we anticipated there would be congressional hearings on this. I don't know that we did. We knew that there was work going on. We knew that the late Senator Harry Reid was really pushing this area of investigation, the former senator of Nevada. So we knew that there was work going on, but I don't think we could have anticipated open hearings to the public. I don't think we anticipated those meetings, points in the open session where there was mention of some material or of a clip where the next thing was, well, let's take this up in closed session. That's the moment, right? Let's take this up in closed session. So
just yesterday, there was a guy who was a former deputy director of the Director of National Intelligence, of the Office of National Intelligence, and he admitted that when the spooks and the Pentagon came in to give a briefing to the Director of National Intelligence on the UAP mystery, he was asked to leave the room, and yet he was cleared to the highest secrets in the country. Yeah. There's something there, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just a matter of time. Now, look, I sort of gird myself a bit here. and the journalist and the skeptic in me says, there are a number of reasons, and you know this, why this material can go into closed session. And one of those reasons is because we're talking about military secrets.
Sure.
We understand that. And I've seen enough of this material, and you've been working in this space for longer than I have, so you've seen even more of it. To make note of the coincidence that a lot of these sightings are in close enough proximity to military installations where you've got to ask some questions about that. So I think ultimately a lot of this material is knowable and is knowable to the military and those higher up in the food chain. But I think even in that subset, I think there is still material that the government is dubious of, has real questions about, that may be the intelligence of other nations, but maybe possibly extraterrestrial and alien in nature. Again, I don't think.
A lot of people scoff, forgive me for interrupting, a lot of people scoff at the idea that governments are capable of hiding secrets. You probably know the term, to put it politely, in my office when I was taught to be an investigative journalist, they told me always assume a screw-up before a conspiracy, that conspiracies are highly unlikely.
They're not smart enough to cover it up, and they're not smart enough to, yes.
But isn't the truth that governments can cover things up if they want to? I mean, there's been shocking things that have happened. I remember reading with horror about the radiation experiments on American citizens, MK-Ultra, the CIA's illegal experiments on American citizens in the 1970s. There are things that are done by governments sometimes that are plausibly deniable, often in the name of national security, that are kept secret from the public. I guess at the heart of the UFO mystery, do you err to the belief that it's possibly foreign adversarial technology, or do you think it is possible that what we're talking about is a non-human intelligence?
I'm not there yet. I am, if I'm on a scale, I'm, I'm, I'm leaning more toward military applications, something based in science, nations being competitive with one another. But that's scary enough.
And I think that's a good point, Tony, for us to conclude on. The fact that the host of The Proof Is Out There will remain a determined skeptic
Yeah.
until he's got the evidence in his face. Tony Harris, thank you so much for joining Reality Check, and good luck with the new series of The Proof Is Out There.
Ross, brother, what a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much for your work in this space. And of course, thanks for having me.
All the best, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.